Warning, this podcast has stories of real-life events and true crime that happens every day. These stories may contain adult language and graphic or disturbing details not suitable for everyone. Listener discretion is advised. In our society, most people are content to go through their daily lives safely and peacefully. But our society is not always safe or peaceful. For that reason, some men and women answer a higher calling to defend and protect their fellow man. You probably know someone who is one of these people, or maybe you are one of these people. The ones who see and do the things most people would never want to. These things are sometimes heroic and beautiful, but often they are horrific and terrifying. It's these things they don't share about with other people. It's these things they carry with them, so you don't have to. But when they get together, they talk to each other about them. And they call these stories war stories. Welcome to another episode of War Stories. I'm Tom.
And I'm Chuck with COVID.
Chuck Mid. Hey, dude, I've already told you I'm a COVID survivor, so now you can join us. We're going to get like t-shirts. We're going to get a ribbon, our own ribbon. Yeah. COVID.
I mean, I've survived the OG version. Where I couldn't walk upstairs and I felt like an obese piece of shit because I couldn't get upstairs without dying. But this one's totally different. And
it's you have Megatron.
It's like a flu. I got the Moronicon virus,
Necronomicon, whatever generation we're on.
Body aches, bro. Body aches and shit. And I mean, like the stomach flu just lasts for like 3 days.
Well, like our last episode where I was very excited to have our friend back, or when I had our friend back, and then our last episode with the coroner, I was very excited because I like the coroner stories. This one I'm excited again because I have a friend back. What's up, Adam?
Hey, Tom. How are you?
I'm good. For those of you who've listened to the show for a long time, Adam has been on the podcast before. Adam's show fucked me up. Adam and I worked patrol together, and then Adam went to a different agency, and he came on and told the story about the time he took 4 rounds from a 357. And I will be honest, that was the first time I'd heard that dispatch audio, and it was hard listening to it when we were recording the show. It was even harder listening to it when I was editing the show. But you've been on since. You're a friend of the show. So how's it been? How's everything going?
Man, life is really good right now. I'm living in Idaho, so
you're out of California, right?
I'm out of California. I don't work for Visalia PD anymore, and I'm not afraid to say the PD anymore. So, I cherish.
What are they going to do to
you? Right, but I did. I cherished my time there, and I still have a good handful of friends there, and but I'm glad to be where I'm at now.
Yeah, I felt that same way where it was like, I didn't want to trash the PD because there was a lot of good people there at the PD. But I was more than happy to trash the city and the administration. So,
well, it's all run by people, right? And it's not necessarily the organization as a whole. So yeah, exactly. And you brought a good friend of yours who also had a storied career in law enforcement. Sean, how are you?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on. I always like having people that have worked together or known each other through work because it's a small community anyway. I always tell the story about how Chuck and I met. He was coming in to record an episode of the show as a friend of mine who had just finished recording an episode of the show was leaving. And when they passed in the hallway, they realized they had worked at the same station at the same agency.
Oh, wow.
And I'd never met Chuck, and my other co-host at the time had never met the other guests. So it was it's all such a small world. So it always makes for better stories because then it stirs all our memories and we start to get a little competitive with trying to up each
Tom,
other.
Tom, can I say full disclosure? So Sean and I worked together in neighboring agencies about 10 miles apart for years, and we knew of each other. I don't know that we ever actually, and I know I went to Tulare PD and I did some things over there and we did mutual aid stuff, but I don't know that we ever worked specifically together. We just knew of each other and we respected each other's reputations. It was more of that. And then we came here. And
everyone knows Adam, so it's hard not to not know Adam. So,
that's only because I got shot, man.
There's other reasons. We won't talk about them, but there's other reasons. But yeah, our agencies are so close. Our towns are so close. I mean, you can almost throw a rock and hit the next town. But so I knew of Adam, but didn't really know him personally. But ended up now we work together in real estate, and it's been awesome. So I could safely say that I helped get him out of California.
Yes, you did.
And on to his next career phase.
Yeah. Exactly.
So that's good. Which we'll talk about that. I actually want to get into that you guys plug that at the end of the show, because you guys are doing some cool stuff together outside of law enforcement now. And it ties into something that I was hesitant to announce it, but screw it. We're on the podcast. I might as well talk about my outside stuff that I got going is to help people like Adam to get outside of law enforcement. So anyway, today, why don't you tell us today, like, how you got into law enforcement? Because that's kind of how we start everybody off, is just what brought them to the job, what brought them to the military, what brought them to firefighting. So, please tell us.
Funny. Yeah, for sure. What's funny is I was right out of high school as a farmer, and I just, I knew that I was interested in two things: real estate and law enforcement. Just because you know somebody in law enforcement, I always thought that was such a cool career. Didn't expect farming to go bad. So when farming went bad, I was a tree fruit farmer, had a partner, and partnership unfortunately fell apart. And next thing you know, I had to choose a career, had a house and family and kids, 3 daughters, and had to do something. So back then, real estate was about 1.5 years of college courses, or at least a semester and a half, or 3 semesters. So law enforcement was a 6-month academy. So I had a neighbor, I will say, my neighbor was Jason Salazar, who was a Visalia PD cop at the time, was an agent, and knew him pretty good back then. He was pretty cool guy, and he would take me on ride-alongs all the time. So it really sucked me in. And next thing you know it, I'm in a 6-month academy and had to rent our house out and live with family. It was a horrible time, starting over at 27 years old. Young, but I had 3 daughters, little young daughters.
I was going to say, you did. I mean, depending on, you were not a young 27. You were a very well into your life 27.
Yeah,
farmer 27.
Yeah, you farming and
farming.
That's some hard shit.
Yeah, great couple years in farming. Had a nice
and I want to back the audience up. Yes, there is farmland in California. It is beautiful and fertile, and there are actual farmers. The entire middle section of California, above the desert, below the pine trees, is farmland, and it's very fertile and beautiful farmland. It's just so happens that it's surrounded by a bunch of assholes.
That's right.
Sad Modesto.
If it wasn't for all that crappy smog flowing into that beautiful area, it would be just as nice as Idaho. Might even be better. Who knows?
Well,
beautiful mountain surrounding. Yeah.
Well, let's not go too far.
That's
pretty crazy. Awesome.
It's crazy. So anyway, so you ended up transitioning. Did it really just come down to a 6-month academy versus an 18-month college course?
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what it came down to. I had to have a job, and that's how serious it was when I was. That's how serious it was when I was. So you remember Adam talked about kids. Go out. Go. Sorry. Go.
Speaking of children.
Speaking of children. Out. Anyway. So with these kids, with everything going on, I had to have a job. There's no way I could get past 6 months. So I did the intensive course, got through it quick. Ended up getting badged by the sheriff's department right out of the academy. That was the only place any place. I applied everywhere. Visalia PD, everywhere.
Did you sponsor yourself through the academy?
I did. Yep.
Okay. So I can attest to that, because I did the same thing. You take the first badge they offer you.
First badge. Yep. Give me a badge. Let's get back to work.
Do you have a steady paycheck in it? Because I'll believe anything you say.
Exactly.
So you must have been pretty well off in the academy, because I've known a lot of guys who have paid their way through their academy, but only half of the class gets picked and the other half doesn't. And then you spend the next year, because they're year certified. If they don't picked up by an agency within a year, they got to do it all over again.
I can tell you from my experience, and I'll let Sean speak to his own experience, is that Chuck, for me, it was clear from
about the second week who was going to get picked up and who wasn't.
You know what? You can see who the rocks are and who aren't the rocks real quick. Real.
I mean, I don't know if it was for
are
you,
you saying Tom's a rocker?
No, he got picked up, obviously. Like you can tell the people who are going to be good cops, and you can tell the people who are just going to skate by.
Be lobs.
I don't want to work with that dude.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
It was definitely there's nothing. I've got to have a job when I get out of here. So I did everything I could, kept my nose clean, did everything I was supposed to do. And there's definitely a lot of screw offs in there that should not have even been in the academy. But I just couldn't understand.
Agreed.
Just young punks. And I was a 27-year-old. I was young, but not like half of them. Some of them were barely 21 years old going to the academy. And just, I had to get through.
And you had bearing and you had life experience and you had a lot of other things that 21-year-old kids don't get because they haven't spent the last 6 years farming and raising a family.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Honestly, I will say that granted, everyone is different, but 21 is too young. Like, I know that's kind of the standard for most departments. And I used to think, why do you have to be over 21 to be a cop? It's too young. Maybe an apprenticeship program where you start somewhere at 20, at 20 or 18 or something, or maybe you go into college, you get a major in something other than criminal fucking justice, because let's face it, they're going to teach you that on the job. Right.
Yeah.
And then you get out at 22 and you go into a program where you're like even the sheriff's department where they make you work in the jail for a while or something.
Yeah.
But even before that, they have a work apprentice program.
Yeah, but I realize now, like 25, I realize also now why they said if you're married and you have kids, you're a lot more attractive as an applicant to a police agency than some 21-year-old guy who's, single and ready to mingle. I completely understand now.
Yeah, definitely makes sense.
John, how long did you work for the sheriff's department?
I did 11 months, right around 9-10 months. I was told I was going to be there for 6 years in the jails. And I said, heck no. They put me in this unit called pretrial, and it was just me and these drug dry up state housed units. It was contracted for the state. Drug dry up all day long, open, walking around me all day long, programming around me all day long, they called it. And, it was the worst experience. I was okay when I was on the other side and we're, hanging out with the Norteños and Serranos. But when it came
I get those people.
I get them. I
understand. They have a code.
They have a code. I mean, I actually enjoyed the Norteño unit because they truly did, for the most part, respect law enforcement. They were required. Their upper hand required them. Yeah. So I learned a lot about it over there, but once I got over there in that drug dry up unit, it was kicking and screaming. And back then, a good friend of ours, Jeremy Jones and Trishawn Jackson, got in a really bad shootout. Right after that, the city, both of them nearly died. And
Sean, tell them a brief story about that, because that's what got me really, passionate about, officer safety and doing the right things. And that's a good little story. I know you could do a full hour on that, but
and that'll lead right into a question we have from a listener.
Yeah, perfect. Totally.
Yeah, we have two questions we want to get you guys a thought on.
Totally. I wasn't there at the time, so I was at the sheriff's office, but I did hear all about it because everyone in law enforcement heard about it, and it was a total setup thing. It was a traffic stop. Jeremy Jones was on FTO. Trishawn was the FTO officer. Pulled over just regular traffic stop car. They both get out. They're the Barbosa brothers. One was in the back seat with a shotgun. They jumped out. I believe they jumped out. I'm not sure that whole part of it or how it initiated, but Jeremy took a round in the face. Trishawn took a round in the arm, and both of them were rough, really bad, really rough. I mean, Jeremy lost an eye. To this day, he's got a glass eye, and Trishawn, he ended up going back to work after several months of recouping, and Trishawn never went back to work. She could never use her arm the same again.
Wow.
But Jeremy, he went back to work for several years till finally he said enough's enough. I can't do this job anymore. And he retired.
Yeah. Sean was one of my training officers in the academy I remember, I think it was for the physical fitness part. And man, she was super fit, super strong, just like,
were you at the agency with me when this happened, or were you already in the Valley when this happened?
What year was that? To be honest, I don't.
It would have been 2000. Would have been 2005, because right after that is when Tulare PD did the big hiring, hired 22 officers. They really rallied around the PD. The whole city did.
Yeah,
I got picked up. I got picked up by one of those. So that was 2005.
I want to say it happened 2006.
2006.
Right before you got out there.
Yeah, you're right. 2006. So it happened right before I got out to Visalia. So
yeah, 2004 to 2005 I was at the sheriff's office, and then 2006 I got hired on. Thank goodness, with Tulare out of that.
Well, we thought we would, since I've got Adam here, and Adam and I got stories, and you and Sean and you and Adam worked the same area. You guys will probably have similar stories. I thought we would do a short stories episode. Our listeners seem to like those, and they go over really well. And we haven't done one in a while. So first, we're going to answer a couple of questions from listeners that they've sent us, and then we're going to start with whoever wants to volunteer. And you just, a 5 or 10 minute, patrol stop gone wrong, a WTF moment of you go into a house and they've got an anaconda loose, things like that. So, we'll get into our lightning round. And usually what happens is somebody will tell a story and somebody else will go, oh my God, that reminds me of the time that such and such happened.
Oh yeah.
And it'll just devolve from there. So that's why the short stories episodes are often really fun. But Chuck has some questions. So I know what one of them is, and I'm curious to see.
Yeah. So I'm going to bring that one up first. It's basically a listener wrote in and said, hey, why do I see cops touching the trunks of cars often?
Oh, yeah.
And then Tom answered it real quick, a portion of it. You grab the back of the car in case there's a shooting that happens. That way the officer's fingerprints are on the car. That way they can, identify the car later as the suspect vehicle and things like that. But there is an aspect of it towards ambushes. And there's been a few incidences in the city of Los Angeles. You can look it up on any Google search or whatever. And I learned this going through the academy and follow-on training and things like that, because there was a lot of incidences that have happened in Los Angeles where people have been ambushed by people laying in wait inside of trunks. Mm-hmm. They would crack the trunk and leave it open. And what you're doing is you're prying off the vehicle. You're coming up to the vehicle. You're seeing if that trunk is open, and two, pushing it down to make sure it's closed. If that motherfucker is open, because there's been numerous incidents of people having those license plate cameras, but being able to operate them and watching the coppers approach, that way they can lay in wait and spring on the officer as soon as they come to the trunk, open it up with a sawed off, boom, pump around in the chest, or some machine gun or a pistol or whatever, and things like that. So yes, you touch the back for fingerprint identification, things like that, if shit goes sideways, but it's also a tactic that we use in law enforcement to see if the trunk is open, to see if there's anybody in there. If it's open, you're either going to shut it and then you're going to back off and you're going to pull everybody out, or you're going to, hey, partner, trunk's open, and you're going to fucking pie off real quick. He's going to take a different advantage point, and you're going to pie off in a triangle, and you're going to pop that trunk, and you're going to see who's in there. And if there's someone laying in wait, you engage and you neutralize the threat. So there's a bunch of different reasons why it's done. There's a tactic.
If you're smart, you can do them both at the same time. You check the trunk and put your fingerprints on it.
Yeah. So there's a tactic, but far too often do you see coppers just coming up and just tapping it like what they were told in the academy. It's muscle memory to them, but they just tap it. They don't really go up to it. I always came up to it and I would grab it. I would jiggle it. I would see if it was open, and I would do it slow at an angle while my partner was keeping eyes on the driver. That's me as a passenger officer, a cover officer.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but Adam and Sean, wouldn't you, and I'm sure Chuck has, one of the first things I would do is make sure that gap is right. Mm-hmm. Like you take in every little aspect of the car as you're stopping him. You look for broken mirrors, broken windows, all that kind of stuff. And one of the things is you're getting out, you look at that trunk, you've got to make sure that gap, if that trunk is cracked, well,
there's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's funny is there was a Facebook post about that recently. That's probably, it's all stemming back to that Facebook post where it showed a guy showing the pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I actually got sucked into that because all these people were putting such weird, odd, stupid responses. And I said exactly what you just said, Chuck. I typed it. I got sucked into it and I typed it. Next thing you know, all these people are responding back. Well, that's not true because look at, they're not pushing on the trunk. And I'm like, well, it's a muscle memory.
It's a muscle memory thing.
They're not, they're doing the motion, but they actually screwed up. They should have been pushing on that trunk to make sure it's latched. And it's funny. There's so many responses, but I got sucked into that question.
and basically we're the agency that I work at. You work a partner team. There's times where you're in an L car where you're by yourself, but for the most part, we train in partner tactics. So it's like, it depends on each partner and how well you know that partner and things like that, where, hey, for this, we're going to do it this way. For this, we're going to do it this way. And after years of working with one another, you kind of have it down pat, where you're try to maximize your safety with working with one another. And you can either push on it or you can hold it like, this feels jiggly, get to a good location, tell that driver to put his hands out the fucking window. We're going to pop this trunk real quick. Right. And you do it, or you hold the trunk like we do in vehicle stops, where you'll see cops with a felony stop, and you'll see one holding a trunk while they're clearing the rest of the car, and then you clear that trunk last. So it kind of depends on the tactics you've been trained up on and things like that. But if you ever see a copper, you're like, well, they cleared the car. Why do I see someone holding that trunk? Especially in major metropolitan areas that have been trained on, partner tactics and things like that. Well, because we don't know. There's an unknown. It hasn't been.
And a lot of the new cars have a trunk popping handle inside them. So it doesn't matter that the trunk is closed, like that they can still unlatch it from the inside. So I hope that explains that question. What is our second question?
So second question is basically like time on the job. It's right here. Howdy, got a question for you. Been a Leo since 2013. I've seen and done things, but not nearly what other officers have. So knowing what you know now at the end of your careers, would you rather have worked at a slower post that don't see as much death and destruction, or are you glad you worked at fast-paced, high call volume spots instead? You gained more experience, but lost to sleep. Thanks.
Higher volume.
I'll dive in first. No matter what you do, you're going to lose sleep. You're going to see crazy shit that's going to cause you to lose sleep over. You're going to see someone die in your arms. You're going to see a kid all fucked up, dead. You're going to see any number of things. My personal thought on this and experience is I would rather work at a higher call volume, a higher paced area to get my experience down. And so that within 5 years, I have done and seen everything under the sun where I feel more comfortable going and training other people or going to calls by myself. I feel like I'm a more well-rounded officer because I have seen and done things that other people haven't done. I've had the volume of calls. I've dealt with 30 calls in a day. I've dealt with 25 calls in a day. I've dealt with numerous shootings and stabbings in one night. I've done it. It makes me more comfortable to, one, officer safety, to train other people, to two, make sure that my partner and I have our shit locked straight. And I feel that it is imperative to have that experience early on, because it just is the building blocks to further your career down the road, as opposed to someone who's worked in an agency who maybe gets 2 calls a day, every day, 3 calls a day, maybe 5 if it's busy. By the time you have 5 years on, I've done more in 1 year than you've done in your 5-year career. I've done more in 5 years than you'll do in your whole career. I look at it as, I think that the experience is much better. And I think that having a higher call volume is more crucial to officer development and officer safety.
Adam, you've worked at 2 very different size agencies.
Yeah. Atascadero was that agency where, it would be January and you'd tap the mic and you'd actually click it and just to see if it was actually working, if there were people working, is the radio still working? Yeah, we're still here. There's just no calls. You'd go a whole night without calls, and that was unusual.
11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. It would get freezing cold, and a lot of times 11 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock at night, they'd roll up the sidewalks
And I am grateful. I'm grateful that we had the crew that we did. We had a sergeant that came from LA or the LA area that said, no, that doesn't mean our job is over. Let's go drone up some business. There's people out there committing crimes. There's people out there doing bad business. So, we got to learn that way. But when I went to Visalia, I mean, it was a rude awakening for a cop that was working on the coast. I mean, it is just like Chuck said, we went from stabbing to shooting to stabbing to this, and I loved it. But and that's exactly where you get the experience that you need to train other officers. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. Has it caused some problems in my life? Absolutely, but it's also given me, the ability to handle things the way I'm supposed to in today's day and age. So,
first.
So I'm gonna piggyback real quick on what Adam said. I think that he went from one agency that was a little bit slower, then went to the faster pace, and that shit was fun. And you're like, whoa, this is crazy. It's a different dynamic. I think that when you have that fast pace, crime after crime after crime, shooting after shooting after shooting, you're talking to all these different suspects, makes you such a good officer for when it is time to do observational work, when it is time to turn those stones and those rocks to find drug addicts, to find guns, to find, criminals and gangsters and stuff like that. It makes you a more well-rounded cop because one, you know how to talk to the suspects and the criminals. Two, you know what to look for shady behavior. You know what crime looks like. And now you have all those skills to fall back on when it comes time to do obs work. And I think when Sean coming from the jails, that's imperative too. You learn how to talk to suspects like that.
Well, yeah, they bring them to you.
Right. They're constantly talking to him every day. And that's invaluable. That something that I never had a chance to do because I wasn't a sheriff.
A higher call volume will generate the exposure similar to how a jail will, right, Sean? I mean, a jail really does generate a lot of exposure to shitheads.
Yeah, and we're constantly going around and talking to different people and trying to get them to talk to us. You're learning how to deal with them, how to get them to talk and be your CI, whatever you need to do. And whenever I worked on the streets in Tulare, I constantly felt like I wasn't doing enough. Like I was constantly trying to rattle bushes, make things happen, get things moving around and doing stuff, trying to whip around and do a traffic stop on a car that looked crazy, constantly trying to do something. If I had an agency if I didn't have that and I had an agency that was, say a Atascadero, I can't imagine doing that for your entire career or even ever getting a chance to learn anything.
Well, I mean, and I'll say this at Atascadero, one of the things that I got exposed to and Adam got exposed to, which I can speak to, is because you don't have specialized units, when a call comes out, you handle it from start to finish. So you really do get at smaller agencies a level of experience handling things like further along in your investigation than you would at a larger agency where you go and you take the face page and you bounce and you turn it over to detectives, you turn it over to narcotics, you turn it over.
Yes.
So you do get a chance to be a more complete police officer working the streets. But again, you have more time to do that, right? Yeah. The trade-off is they expect you to do that, but they also have more time for you to do that. And then the other issue is if something comes out, like a radio call comes out, when there's only 4 people working, there's a 1 in 4 chance you're going to get it. So the odds of it being you, I think, increase exponentially because there's less cops working. However, what is, I can speak to having worked, narcotics where it's really, really busy. And then having worked Tascadero where patrol can have months of very slow, cold periods. Busy's better. It's better for me. It's better it's better to be going. And I think it gives you less time to reflect on how horrible what just happened to you was. It gives you less time to internalize. You see more of it, but you internalize less of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You're too busy to really give a shit about it. And you move, maybe there's one that sticks out, but I think you're able to desensitize a little bit more readily. Now, whether you hang on to it when you get home at night or whether you take it off and reconnect with your family. That's up to you and how you deal with your home life. But as far as being at work goes, I can only imagine a cop who spends hours and hours and hours not ready, not mentally prepared, not in that zone. And then they finally do get this traumatic child call, and then they have another 4 hours of nothing to do but see that dead kid's face. Yeah. They're going to internalize that one call. Whereas if you see 5 dead kids in a night, right, wrong, or indifferent, it becomes a little bit more like you just stay in that place and you don't fall into it a little bit more. I don't know. Again, that's all a trade-off, I guess.
Yeah. I ended up all my years over at Tulare, and then I ended up medically retiring with a hip replacement. But I wasn't done. So I went to the DA's office. What was neat was when I went to the DA's office, I was working not rule crimes. What was I working? Yeah, I did rule crimes. I did welfare fraud. I was able to make things happen, write search warrants, do things in there that those people in welfare fraud had never seen an investigator do before. Right. And all that stuff was just normal for me because it's what we did at the PD. We wrote search warrants. We met with judges. We did everything we needed to do, but they didn't do that stuff. Right. So I got a chance to flip it a little bit and see what it's like to slow down after, like Adam did.
But a big agency, like I know some big agencies where I went and talked to them, and I'd go to a training class. I'd sit down with them. We'd have some freaking road sodas, and they'd say, "Oh yeah, you get the sergeant to bless the arrest, and then you take them." And I'm like, "I'm sorry, you do what now?" And they go, "Yeah, you get the sergeant to bless the arrest." And I go, "What is that?" And they say, "Well, anytime you want to arrest somebody, you call a supervisor out, explain your probable cause, and then they can say, yes, that's a good arrest, and they sign off on your arrest." And I go, "Do you know what would happen to me at my agency if I called the sergeant out to explain to him why I was arresting somebody?" And they said, "What?" And I said, "I'd get fucking fired." So it's say, if you can't do your own job, why did we hire you? So it's so
razzed to the end of your career,
right? It's such a contrast.
They trained us that way. It's like, make this decision. Yeah. Why do you need me?
You're a cop.
So I agree with that so fucking much. Like, why do I need a supervisor to bless my arrest? But working at a bigger agency where there's so many more lawsuits and litigations and bullshit, they do it for CYA purposes.
Oh, of course they do.
Shit fall back on like a sergeant or a lieutenant.
That same agency that said that they had to bless their arrests is also the one that I will not mention their name. Okay, but their initials are LAPD. And this was the same agency where when I went to their defensive tactics instructing school, and I was talking about defensive tactics, I had one of their DT instructors tell me, he goes, "Yeah, I've been in the risk management meetings where I've heard bean counters actually say we'd rather a cop get hurt and have to medically retire than pay out a lawsuit to a suspect because we injured him during an arrest." Dude, it's cheaper.
Well, it probably ends up being cheaper.
It's cheaper.
It's so fucking true, dude. It's so true.
I've been present for that conversation. I went, "Oh my God, that's like that." You just said the quiet part out loud.
Bigger agencies, like, and he's like, fuck it, whatever. He's not even an associate.
He's like, "No, that's what they think."
So bigger agencies would rather wipe their hands of that bullshit than have to deal with the harder stuff than dealing with suspects and shit like that with lawsuits and actually taking care of their officers. They'd rather just be like, "You're good, slap a Band-Aid on it, get back the fuck out there, you're fine, don't be a pussy." But it's so like lots of bigger agencies have such big morale problems where I'm assuming where all three of you guys worked had probably great morale. Morale was fucking through the roof.
No.
The
morale it's based on the people you work with. I think no matter where you go, really, it's because admin. We have interviewed enough cops in the show to know that admin sucks balls and is trying to stab you in the back at any fucking agency you go to, no matter where you go, no matter whether it says PD, SO, SD, university PD, school PD. They're it's the giant navy blue and or green weenie it's out to get you in the back, which with
no lube.
It is. Yeah, it is what it is. Yeah. It just depends on if your agency takes pleasure in it or not. They're all going to do it to you. They're all going to stick it in you. The question is, did they actually enjoy it? Now, Adam, I have to ask you this. Do you remember the call? Because it's short stories and I know we're going into them. So I wanted to ask you if you remember the call where we were chasing that, I think it was a beer run. And Brownie's chasing the guy on the beer run, and the guy goes over the fence in the backyard. And Brownie, because he'd played freaking football in high school, he just stiff armed the fence and went through it to catch him.
Yeah, this and the funny thing is Sean Cardoza knows Aaron Brown too because of his mom Sharon.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But Aaron, he had ungodly strength, man. It's like each of his legs were like rhinoceros legs, and when he just stuck his arm out, the guy went over the fence and he just basically pushed through the fence like it was cardboard.
Like I know he was fat. I know Aaron was fat. He had a belt size that was like his dad was big.
But I
don't understand. Yes, I was just about to say I don't understand for a man of such a girth how he was that quick and agile.
That's fucked up, man.
And strong. No, it's not fucked up. Because I asked him that, and do you remember when he lost weight? He lost all that weight, and it looked weird on him. It just looked gross on him.
Yeah, I know. I wanted him to get it back.
And he did, and he looks great now, and all that stuff. But I remember like I was a young copper, and we were all working together. It was like graveyard, weekend, nights, summer, freaking. It was like we were all in our mid-20s, and I just remember we were in that little area off of that main stretch of town, and there was a residential neighborhood, and I just remember
we chased that beer run like it was a freaking like it 211.
Was, oh yeah,
211 with a gun, man.
Because we were young and it was fun, right?
Yeah,
and it's like it's a bad guy chasing the same. But I just wanted to ask if you even remember when Brownie, because that was the first time I'd ever seen that. And he went through that fence like
I'd seen that
Wile E.
a couple
Coyote.
times with him. Yeah, I've seen that a couple times with him. He's there was we used to live together.
Yes, I do know
we worked there. And there was a time I was not
remember
working.
I used to just come over and
I think you called yeah, of course. He called me, you called me one time and said, dude, he got in the longest foot chase. It was like 45 minutes. I'm like, Brownie did?
You're right.
And he like when I went home and I saw him, like he was on the Barca lounger laying like this. And
he wouldn't move.
But he looked like a zombie on the couch, just beat red, sweating. And that was 3 hours after he had got off work. And I'm like, are you okay? He's like, I'm just really tired. but this is the thing with Brownie. I have an immense amount of respect for him.
Oh, hell yeah.
He never, ever quit.
No.
Like he was never going to lose a fight. He was never going to give up on chasing somebody.
No.
There
was one time, and I'll tell you the story right now. Brownie, I'm going to dime you off, and I love you, brother. I'm going to tell you about the time you couldn't do the job. So Brownie gets dispatched to the south end of town. And actually, that's not true. Brownie ended up doing the job because I teased him a little bit. Gets dispatched to the south end, and listeners to this podcast will know it's always bad on the south end, right? Well, this in fact
it's always bad.
It's always bad on the south end. But it was an injured deer. So Brownie gets dispatched to an injured deer, and for as much as Brownie enjoyed putting the hurt locker on bad guys, he could not. He had the hardest time with animals. So I get there, and he had shot deer before. He just didn't like it. If somebody else got dispatched to it, he wasn't going to be sad. But if he got dispatched to it, he wasn't going to try and ask to get out of it. Right. So he handled his business. But in this particular one, I've got he's on the south end town. I've got a ride along. I rolled down there to see what's going on. And he's about to shoot the deer. And I'm like, all right, he asked for clearance to shoot it. And then he stops and he goes, oh, God damn it. No. And I'm like, what? And he goes, look, and he points, and right off of the sidewalk in the empty dirt lot are the two fucking babies. Like they still have their spots on them. They still have their spots on them, and they're just looking at him. And they're just staring at him and not moving. And he's like, I can't fucking do it with them watching. I'm like,
what did you had to go blindfold them?
Well, that's right. That's the thing. I'm all, you want me to do it? You want me to shoot her? And he's like, no, just hold on. And he goes, shoo, you guys shoot. And he's shooing away the babies. And as soon as he got them to run far enough, he got back over to the mom and shot her. And then was like, okay, when they come back, she'll already be dead and they won't see me do it. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
My gosh.
That's funny. Make you go chase the babies away.
Exactly. So I just thought those brownie stories were amazing because those are the kinds of things like working. Everybody works with somebody like that. I'm sure, Sean, you probably worked with the guy that was like the toughest dude with the biggest heart of gold that just like when it came to the little, maybe you were that guy. I don't know.
You're on a podcast with that guy. His name's Sean Cardoza.
I was just gonna say
he's called the count. They called him the counselor.
The counselor,
right, Sean?
Yeah. Man, I didn't like drag my feet at calls. I just had a hard time leaving when they had family issues. I just been like, all right, I don't want to just put a Band-Aid on it and go to the next one. Can I say anything or do anything to actually help this family? When it was just a simple domestic 415 or something with family, it's like, I felt like I had to leave them with something good. Yeah. So I guess I was the counselor of the shift there for a while. I shook it off. That changed. You can't say people's personalities don't change because mine did. I changed.
Was it the job that did it or was it you deciding?
It was. Honestly, I think it was probably started in the jails dealing with the gangbangers and stuff, but so when I was in the academy director pulled me in and did my eval and said, you're going to have to tough it up, man. You won't make it out there. So I went from that to now, in real estate, we do a lot of disc profiles and get to know people's personalities and whatnot. And High D is a very direct person. I got a lot of High D in my personality now, which back then I did not. I was very, very kind of chill, family man, farmer, family man, to now I had, the jails dealing with those gangbangers, really.
Yeah, I can attest with working with Sean. He's very direct and he's a good leader. So
that's funny. Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it. But I'll tell you what, I will say now he is pretty high up in the PD. So I'm not going to say his name because he's still there, very high up in the PD at Tulare. We'll say very high. Was probably the best sergeant I ever had on patrol. I mean, we had the best time ever. Things that there's no way any PD can get away with to this day. Yeah, we did it. We're talking Ouija boards at night next to the, at Halloween next to the cemetery, stupid stuff like that. Makeshift handwritten, hand drawn out Ouija boards. Oh man, I can remember a pursuit that we got into with the 10851 guy, and we chased this guy all over the place, and we finally catch him, and we're running up there, we're tackling him and whatnot, catching this guy, and the sergeant walks up, props his leg up on top of the guy's back and goes, "Good job, guys." Ever since then, his name was Captain Morgan.
Oh, that's funny.
Captain Morgan. He might be the chief of police somewhere now. I don't know, but anyway,
you can't get away with that shit now. That's for sure.
No. And it's funny how those nicknames just like show up out of nowhere and stick. My dad told me a story early on, and our last name is, it's been said it's Gandy, but it rhymes with the word Gumby, right? And so this lady comes into it's the LAPD division circa like Adam 12, like the late 70s. She goes, "Is there a Sergeant Gumby here?" And the desk sergeant was like, "Gumby?" And that was it. Like fucking one old lady mispronounces my dad's name, and my dad had to change stations to lose the nickname Sergeant Gumby. So it's funny how that shit happens. Like,
yeah.
I mean, shit, Collins, you and I, you and Brownie had the Duke brothers. The Duke brothers are Crash and Bash.
Are you talking about hey, that's not fair, man. That was my first pursuit. I was a rookie. 45 minutes. And I remember afterwards, after I hit the car a few times and then it crashed in a tree at 40 miles an hour. The CHP's like, "You meant to hit it, right? That was legal intervention." And I was like, "Yeah." And my sergeant's like, No. No, he's an idiot.
You guys didn't have a pit policy?
No, not at that time.
Not at that. Well, if you were pit trained, but no, I wasn't pit trained.
Well, that's the thing. The policy was
they went over all that. So.
The policy kind of said, if you know how to do it, we're not going to tell you can't, but we do not encourage anyone who does not know how to do it to ever do it. Yes. Right,
dude.
I'd say the wording "discourage" was in there.
Picturing that pursuit in my head is making me laugh out loud right now.
I'll tell you, no, this was out in the country, hills, dirt, like yeehaw, like oak trees. This was an episode of Duke's. That's how they got the nickname the Duke Boys, because it was,
the Atascadero to Templeton in 45 minutes, and I had no idea where I was going on dirt roads. It was horrible.
That drive takes you 10 minutes. 10 minutes on the freeway. So you can imagine the back roads he took if it took him 45 minutes to go from one place.
Yeah. I crashed at about minute 43. I think Aaron made it 2 more minutes than me. So.
That's all right, dude. You didn't hit a lady in the back. You didn't rear end a lady in the back when you were looking for a seatbelt violation going the other way. I did. So.
Oh, man.
You know what's crazy? The story you guys are telling, like if you were to do that now in the current climate, they would hang you out to dry.
Yeah.
100%.
Oh, yeah.
It's changed so much.
It would be so bad. You'd be like, look, I was on a dirt road. I hit my brakes. I slid. I hit him. Shit happens. We were in a pursuit. Yeah, but you could have tactics leading up to it. Like,
okay. So I will not name the officer, or I will, and I'll say this. I won't name the agency, but their initials are CHP. So their policy was, if you crashed a car, you were suspended. Period. End of story. Right? Like if you wrecked a car, you got days off. There was no negotiating. How bad you wrecked the car determined how many days off you got. Right? So I had heard from some guys that had been around for a while that they were able to obtain the proper decals for said highway patrol cars. And there was a community stash of said decals for said highway patrol cars right next to a list of phone numbers of body shops that could repair car parts in a night.
Oh, shoot.
And it became commonplace for you to crease a door or ding a fender on your patrol car, then quickly do the math about how much it would cost for one of these overnight car shop places to fix it, and decide if it's less than what my day off is going to cost me, I'll just pay it out of pocket. And then you had somebody drive your busted ass car over there, dropped it off, went and picked another car out of the motor pool, went and picked it back up at the end of your shift and had it back in the lot before anybody knew you had fucked it up.
Wow.
Oh shit.
Crazy.
Some cowboy stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
That is.
I mean,
we would have been fucked.
Good luck doing that. Good luck doing that nowadays with cameras.
Oh my God. Well, that's the thing. That was before GPS and VIX and body cams and all that shit.
Funny thing is, I set a black and white on fire.
You did what?
So it was the middle of the night. I was working by myself and I assisted a unit on a call. And I was like, all right, well, I'm sitting there and I'm controlling traffic, and then I go and shoot the shit, and I'm like, all right, guys, I'm going to leave. My car died. The battery is dog shit. It had 98,000 miles on it. The car was a piece of shit, and it was new, a couple years old, but we just drive the shit out of them. And I was like, hey, I need a jump. They're like, all right, I got some cables. And the guy brought his personal cables out. And I'm like, all right, cool. Well, it was dark, and I went, all right, black to black, red to red, and I'm fucking doing it. And I go black to black. He's starting to talk to me. I fucking crossed him on mine.
Oh, shoot.
Oh.
And then I was like, all right, hit it. Start that thing up. Get my car to start. Next thing I know, we see sparks. And I'm like, oh, what the fuck? And the cables caught on fire and started to melt. And then they melted into the cars. And I was like, oh, shit. And it's on the battery terminal. So I'm like, I don't know how to get this shit off without electrocuting myself. And I'm like, even if you turn the car off, you still have volts of the battery. I'm like, fuck it. So I took my my flashlight, because it's part plastic and part metal. So I took my flashlight out and I was like, you know what? I have plastic and metal in here. I hope I don't get fucking shocked. I'm hoping I'm holding the plastic. And I start beating the shit out of this battery terminal. And finally they pop off. And I'm like, thank fucking Christ. And my car is dead. And I'm like, oh, fuck. So we let them cool off and we pry them out of the cars. Like they had melted the plastic in both black and whites. We pull them off. We put them in a bag. And luckily my vehicle started right away, and I was like, hey, it worked. Fuck it. It works. Their vehicle started, and I had to fill out some paperwork to say, yeah, I did this. It was an accident. It was dark. I guess I mixed the terminals, black to red to black. Yeah. And I took it on my sleeves, and I was like, fuck it, dude.
The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
No, I didn't get any trouble. They just every roll call at the beginning of shift, they would bring out the fucking bag and pull out the used terminals. In karma,
it's not unlike
I had that fucking vehicle every shift for like the next month, and it was it because it had these racing stripes down the front of the grill that were just melted plastic.
Oh shit!
That's not unlike wearing a helmet in briefing. Or a bag of cookies, Thomas.
Yes, it's not unlike that. That was okay. I think probably watching one of our trainees have to go 10-8 wearing a hard hat and an orange traffic vest and like knee pads and elbow pads and safety glasses was probably one of the moments where I looked at the other cops and went, how far do we take this? Like teasing, at what point are we saying we're making ourselves look fucking stupid?
These are the things it's so funny. We look back 20 years, 15, 20 years. You can't do that stuff now because you'd get your ass sued, because it would be funny at the moment and they would even be laughing. We'd be laughing, but boom. You'd get sued for $1 million.
Oh God!
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's some of the stuff I wouldn't get.
There's no humor in this world.
There is no humor in this world. I think if you know your partners, like the dead squirrel that I rigged to the trunk to pop out at the rookie when he opened it, I could still get away with that, right? Like I think if you know your partners and you get to really be a good law enforcement family, you'll figure that out.
Yeah. Yeah,
some of the other shit though, they used to just do to rookies because they were rookies. No, you're not.
Yeah.
No,
you got to make sure they're part of the crew before you do that. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. And that's the other thing. Like, don't be that fucking guy. Like my rule was this: like, I'll risk my life for any one of my partners, but I won't risk my pension. Right. But at the same time, like, don't be that fucking guy. Like, if you get teased, barring, we're not talking about the incidents where like people have been physically harmed. I'm talking about if you just get fucking teased, you get your feelings hurt. If you get like, your car door frozen shut or your ticket book, well, who was the officer on our department that had his jacket taken around town, and every night shift took pictures of every dirt bag in town?
Every bum in the town. Yeah, we put it. Grab his jacket.
So
dude, I don't remember that. Oh
I know who it was. I know who it was.
Hilarious.
Tom 22. It was Tom 22's jacket.
Oh my God! I remember how pissed he was.
Yes, he was, and he had left it out, and people were fucking irritated with him for constantly leaving his shit out. So he went on days off, and during the 3 days off he had, night shift's responsibility was to take that jacket to every freaking scumbag, shitbird, drug addict, and homeless person in town and take a digital camera photo, take an evidence photo with his evidence camera of them wearing it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's when that's funny because that's when cell phones weren't like really, really.
Yeah. No, we used his evidence camera because like that was,
I think that's when I had a flip phone still.
Oh, I think we all had flip phones still. So
I got a razzing that turned backwards. It was a completely reverse razzing.
Oh no.
That story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was brand new cop, literally probably maybe 6-8 months on the shift. Finally got a chance to take 3 comp days. And so I was on patrol. I was going to take comp day the next day, but nobody knew I was taking comp day the next day except for my sergeant. I had prior to transporting someone, I heard cops say this over the radio, asking permission to go get fuel prior to transporting. So I'm thinking, okay, new shift, I better make sure I do it right. So I tell the sergeant, hey, is it code 4 to head out to fuel prior to transporting this guy? And the sergeant said, negative, push your unit. And just totally razzing me.
Right.
And I'm like, I didn't know what to say. And he goes, affirmative. And so then I go out to fuel. Everything's fine. Later on that day, the sergeant calls me over and says, hey, something's going to happen today. You're going to get some sort of gift full of diapers. All right. And it's your shift screwing with you. All right. They're calling you a baby because you asked for that over the radio. They're calling you a baby for some reason. So this is what you're going to do. It's going to be a crack up. All right. You ready? You're going to just throw that thing down and then you're going to stomp out the door, and you're not coming in tomorrow because you have a comp day. And I'm going to play it up the next day in briefing that you quit and you turned in your notice.
Oh my God.
No way.
Yes.
I go into debriefing and I'm ready for it. They hand me this basket and I look at it and it's full of diapers and different stuff. And I threw it down. I go, fuck you guys. And I walked out the door. The sergeant calls me as I'm driving home and he goes, dude, that was the best. They're all freaking out. It worked out better than I thought. That was the best.
That's awesome.
Did any of the guys call you, Sean?
Oh yeah, they're ringing. He goes, whatever you do, man, don't answer the phone. Don't answer the phone. They're calling. One of the officers is a very close friend of mine, and for a week, 2 weeks, she wouldn't talk to me when she finally found out the truth. She went home. Her husband was he was way up high in
she's mad
corrections. Yeah, he told her, I told you never screw around on shift like that. I told you this is going to turn into an IA. You're going to be in trouble. So she was like pissed because her husband got on her because of this prank.
Oh, I love that. That's a great story.
That is amazing. I think that's
better than putting a fish. That's better than putting a dead cat in the engine. You know what I mean?
I'll tell you, there's nothing like a good patrol shift.
Did you put a dead cat in the engine?
Best patrol shift ever.
I don't know who did that, Tom, but somebody could have done that.
That's happened many times.
Dead fish.
I'll tell you what I did. I'll tell you what one of the ones I did was, and I mentioned this earlier, is I rigged up. We went on a 459 alarm and we were checking the perimeter. It's a business. It was like, fine, code 4, just tell the responsible, come turn it off. There's a dead fucking squirrel, like an old rancid, stiff, dead squirrel sitting on the ground. So I grabbed my evidence gloves. I picked it up. I'm like, I know there's a use for the dead squirrel. So I packed it in evidence bag, threw it in my trunk, took it back to the station. And then I looked at the shift roster for the next morning for day shift, and I saw who the rookie was going to be. And I was like, okay, this is perfect. He was one of my explorers. He's now a rookie cop. He's due for some razzing. He's out of FTO, so he's fair game. So I parked my car in the, Adam, you'd park in that spot on either side of the back door. So I parked mine there. And we had this thing, right? Like if you talk to a cop that was going off shift first, you could call, you could be like, hey, I'll take your car. And if he said cool, then you didn't have to go through all the rigmarole of shotgun and all that stuff. So I made sure that nobody got to talk to me about my car until the rookie did. And the rookie's like, hey, did you give your car away? I'm like, no. He's like, sure. Can I take it? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And I had enough seniority. He was all excited because it was a newer car. This asshole goes to put his war bag in the trunk, and I had rigged it up so that the squirrel was on a wire and inside the evidence bag, but the evidence bag was mounted to the bottom of the trunk, and I had measured it so that when he opened the trunk to put his war bag in, the wire would pull the squirrel out of the evidence bag, and it would flop out of the trunk on the wire and hit him in the face at about eye level.
That's horrible. That took some precision. Wow.
So he opens the trunk, and we're all like hiding back to see what, it would have been a great viral video had we had cell phone cameras back then. But that's why I'm glad I did all my stupid shit before it was all on tape.
Yeah. Can't get away with that now.
Oh God. Well, I appreciate the short stories, gentlemen. And normally we dedicate our episodes to, a fallen brother or sister officer, but I think in light of NYPD, we're going to go ahead. Chuck, you have that information. We're going to go ahead and dedicate our episode to the officers of the NYPD.
So the two officers that were killed by gunfire on January 25th, 2020, police officer Wilbert Mora and Jason Riviera. Get into here real quick. Police officer Wilbert Mora and police officer Jason Riviera were shot and killed when they responded with a third officer to the report of a domestic dispute call in an apartment at 119 West 135th Street in Harlem. When the officers arrived at the apartment about 6:30 p.m., they spoke with the suspect's mother. Officer Riviera and Officer Mora went to the rear of the apartment to interview the suspects while the third officer stayed with the mother. As the officers approached the door to the bedroom the suspect was in, the suspect opened the door and immediately began to fire on the officers, striking Officer Riviera and Officer Mora. The third officer returned fire, killing the suspect. Officer Riviera and Officer Mora were transported to Harlem Hospital in grave condition. Officer Riviera succumbed to his wounds. A short time later, Officer Mora remained on life support for 4 days until his organs could be donated. Officer Mora had served with the New York City Police Department for 4 years and was assigned to the 32nd Precinct. He was 27, 4 years of tour. His badge is 15918. I'll get into Jason Riviera. He was age 22. Tour was 1 year and 3 months. Badge 25738.
Wow, that's too fucking
Too young.
Too fucking young.
Yeah.
Rest easy, brother.
A year and a
We got it
half
from here.
A year and a half and 4 years on the job. That's crazy.
Yeah. And I'm gonna tell our listeners, if you're not in law enforcement, you're not in the military, and you're not a firefighter, we are all those of us that are no longer in the profession, and a lot of them that are in the profession are telling you the time is coming where there are two sides that are going to ask you to make a choice. Do you want roving bands of gangs looting stores, setting things on fire, ambushing and shooting police officers, and getting immediately released from jail without any bond, without any bail, without any consequences? Or do you want a society where the police have the authority to handle these problems and you don't just have a revolving door of assholes? There is going to come a point where you have to make a decision as to which one you want to live in. I personally do not want to live in a society where an officer with less than 2 years on the job and an officer with 4 years on the job take rounds and get ambushed in the NYPD. That's not, I'm going to draw a hard line in the sand and say, yeah, no, I'm a hard no dog.
Yeah. I mean, it's honestly, people should be asking that question now because it's happening.
That's why I'm asking it now.
Yeah. You look at the major metropolitan cities of East Coast, West Coast, and you're seeing this shit. You're seeing these flash mobs come in, destroy $1 million businesses and stealing all their shit on their storefront. You're seeing roving bands of criminals come in and home invade robbery on places, and then you're arresting people, and it is a revolving door. They get released immediately.
Yeah.
Very rarely do they get held.
Yeah. So, well, Sean, Adam, do you guys have any final thoughts as we're closing out? It was pretty fun. Thank you guys for coming on.
Yeah, no, this was great. I really appreciate it.
I know Adam's got some good stories, and I know Sean, Adam said you have some good longer stories, so we'll have to have you guys both back on. But the most important thing is I wanted to give you guys a chance to talk about you're both, Adam more recently than you, Sean, but Sean, I know you're like me, you had to medically retire. There is life after law enforcement, and you guys are, I think you talked about it a little bit. You're making that life for yourselves. Tell us about, because I want some of the people listening to this that are maybe either struggling with my career is coming to an end, whether by choice or by their natural design of age, or whether it's by injury, there is life after law enforcement.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I saw right away early on in law enforcement was that most of these, I started seeing it literally within second year being in the career, that these officers just retire and live maybe 5 years, 10 years at the most, and then they die. And it's because they're so used to their law enforcement, way of life that once they retire, they have nothing else outside of retirement. So one thing that I didn't want that, and I knew I was interested in real estate. So I became a realtor while I was still a law enforcement officer and started really helping my friends selling houses. I wanted to have a retirement job so that didn't happen to me.
Right.
And I highly suggest if you've got any other interest besides law enforcement, start putting your foot in the door a little bit, starting to do some things. That way you have a job after retirement. I just didn't expect to retire so early with a hip replacement.
Yeah. You're lucky that you took care of that plan so early on. So many guys are, they wait until they're a year or two away from retirement. Let me tell you, as soon as you start like being able to count the years to until you retire in single digits, like when you get like below 10 years till you retire, that's when you should start because you can do things in your professional career. You can take assignments. You can take professional training. You can pursue things that will set you up for success in your retirement. But also a lot of these departments have education reimbursement. And so if you take advantage of the education reimbursement while you're working, you can get, 5 or 6 years worth of schooling done on the city's dime or on partially their dime, and it'll set you up for when you're done.
There you go. Yeah. There's life after retirement. I'll tell you what, you got to set it up.
Yeah.
And absolutely. It's a cool thing that we get to retire early as law enforcement officers, 55, 50.
Yeah.
If they started at 21 years old,
right.
I mean, that's a pretty neat opportunity. But you got to be prepared for what's after that because you got a long life still left and you want to live a long life. So, and there's so much more you can do. Great.
And the world is full of cops that have either had a heart attack or eaten their gun within 5 years of retiring. Don't be a fucking statistic. Like, be original.
Well, I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that are and to be honest, full disclosure, I was the same type of cop, very tied up in the identity of being a cop. Yeah. Well, what else can I be? I don't think I could do anything else. Well, even after cop work, maybe I should do security. Maybe I should do PI. Maybe I should do this. And if you want to do that, good on you. But a lot of people don't want to do that.
Yeah, I swore I would never pick up a gun for somebody else for money again.
But like, they don't want to do that, but they don't know what else to do. Yeah. And I think you just have to take that first step and make a decision to do something else.
I'll tell you what, I actually went back to work after I retired. I did 6 months as a full-time realtor making really good money. I just didn't have any medical at the time. So I took that job at the DA's office, only planned on a year, ended up doing 2 years. But my career as a real estate agent, real estate broker, forced me to just say, forget it. I'm done. I'm doing just fine as a realtor. I have my small, medical retirement. Let's just go full-time real estate agent. So, I mean, you could start something else. And you may find that something else might force you to retire early too. So,
I can say if you're looking for real estate in the Southern Idaho area, DM us, let us know. How can people reach out to you guys directly?
Yeah, so we're actually in 2 states. We're actually in 3 states for the most part. We're in the state of California. We have a large team. We sell roughly 256 properties, I believe, in 2021. So we have a large team in California, and then we also have a team that just started about a year and a half ago in Idaho, and Adam and I work together in that team. We have 9 agents in Idaho, and then we have 1 agent in Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee area.
And that area is booming.
Yeah, just like Idaho, it's actually going faster.
Better, right
now. Yeah. So I mean, if anyone needs any help buying, selling, investing in real estate in either any place in California, any place in southern Idaho, or Nashville, Tennessee, we're doing pretty well, and we've got the knowledge at this point. We have about 50 years in combined real estate experience on our team.
And the words of the great poet Jordan Davis, "Buy dirt," right?
Yeah, buy dirt.
John, what's your how do they contact you?
Yeah, how do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I can say my cell phone number is 559-318-6727, or Sean at Cardoza, that's CARDOZA, realestategroup.com.
Sean at CardozaRealEstateGroup.com. And you can help people out with Tennessee, California, and Idaho, which if you're in California looking to go to Tennessee or Idaho, you've got somebody who can handle you at both ends, which
both sides
sounded a lot dirtier than I meant it to.
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
So anyway,
Appreciate
it. You can find me at adamcollinsrealestate.com if you want to look at my website, and it's got all the bells and whistles there for you to contact me at any time for any reason.
Yeah. And so if you guys need any of these, either of these gentlemen, they'll help you out. I know there's a lot of other cops out there that have been transitioning to some famous blue check TikTok social media cops that are pushing a lot of real estate ventures and stuff now, whose names I won't mention. But honestly, I mean, real estate, I'm in marketing now, it's like, you don't have to be like, oh, I better go into security, or okay, you could go into emergency management. Sure. You could go into executive protection, but I didn't want to have to, draw my gun and consider blasting somebody or taking a bullet just for a fucking paycheck anymore. I was done with that. Well, I can go work executive protection. I can go get paid to guard some overbloated, egomaniacal rich person and make them feel better because I can carry a gun while they're walking out to get, ice cream. But you know what? I'm good. That's right. I didn't get into the law enforcement profession to guard rich assholes.
That's right.
So
well, I'll also missed in that we're real estate coaches as well. So I'm a real estate coach across the nation and in Canada. And if there's any law enforcement officers out there that are looking and are interested in real estate, I would be willing to talk to them as well and tell them the pathway to get there. Would love to help.
Well, there you go. So that's really cool.
Like I said, I can attest to that. I can attest to that because Sean has helped me, is continuing to help me. And it's a good career. It's a lot of fun. And if you are in law enforcement and you are a good cop, this is a natural transition. I'm going to be honest with you. It's super fun.
You're just talking people.
And if you like talking to people, you're actually talking to people that like you,
right?
And want your help.
Right.
So there's
they wave at you with all 5 fingers. It's amazing.
Yeah.
What's funny is that when I talk to people and I'm trying to sell them something, regardless if it's something that I own or whatever, they're like, you should sell these things. Like, you're really good at it. I'm like, look, dude, it's just the way of talking to people.
Verbal judo.
It's just it's verbal judo. It's no different than talking someone into cuffs. Talk me into a police car. Something else.
You can dodge a wrench. You can dodge a ball. If you can talk to a dirt bag, you can talk to a home buyer. Sometimes the dirt bag's easier.
That's right. I used to say 2 ways of helping people. In law enforcement, they would either, when you're done helping the person, they would either spit at you or flip you off.
Right.
Yes.
In real estate, they'll cry on your shoulder in happiness. You help them reach the American dream of owning a home. It's just a different way of serving.
Yeah. And you decide which outcome you want. You can pick which outcome. I'd rather have the tears from the Grateful Housewife.
Yeah, there you go.
So. Anyway, well, I thank you, gentlemen, for coming on. And until our next episode, come home with your shield or on it.